Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Reading the Harry Potter series is like a long, mesmerizing journey through a living maze. At every turn, new discoveries, behind every corner, the half-shadows of untold secrets. Each chapter, each book, seems to add a piece to this magical puzzle, and then it feels like the final book puts an end to it all. But was it really the end? J.K. Rowling has provided answers to many questions, both in the books and in interviews afterward, yet the more she explained, the more questions seemed to appear. So much remains hidden, unexplained, or simply strange. Let's dive into some of the most puzzling mysteries in the story that still defy logical explanation. Enjoy watching. Number 1. How does Colin Creevey's camera work? Colin Creevey and his camera, he's one of those characters you just can't forget. He dashed around Hogwarts snapping pictures with the enthusiasm of a paparazzo. At first glance, it seemed like a sweet little character quirk. Until the Goblet of Fire revealed that Muggle technology doesn't work at Hogwarts due to magical interference. So how did Colin's camera function? Was it enchanted by his parents, modified by Hogwarts staff? But for what purpose? Or maybe Colin simply didn't know it shouldn't work and somehow it did, defying all magical laws. Could we have had one of the most unusual wizards in the magical world right under our noses and no one noticed? Number 2. What happened to Sally Ann Perks? This mystery haunts readers who paid close attention to the sorting scenes. Sally Ann Perks was named right before Harry Potter in the first book, and then vanished. She is never mentioned again, not during Owls, not on any lists, not in any dialogue. If we follow the alphabetical order, Perks should have appeared alongside Pattle and Potter when Flitwick called out names for exams, but her name is just gone. Did she transfer, fall ill, or did something mysterious happen to her that was quietly swept between the lines? Or was this simply a random and unforgivable author error? Number 3. Why was Draco Malfoy Snape's favourite? We all remember how Severus Snape treated Harry. Cold, biased, often harsh. As we later learned, much of that came from the pain of his past and memories of Lily and James. Harry reminded him not only of betrayal, but of lost love. But that raises a logical question. Why was Snape so fond of Draco Malfoy, who embodied all the worst traits of James Potter? Arrogance, smugness, contempt for others. Malfoy seemed to represent everything Snape supposedly despised. Or did Snape forgive Draco because he saw in him a chance to redeem the mistakes of his own youth? Number 4. Why didn't Dumbledore ensure Harry had a better childhood? We know Dumbledore left Harry with the Dursleys for his protection. Lily's blood magic, anchored through Petunia, kept him safe. That makes sense. But was that enough? Why didn't Dumbledore check how Harry was doing? Did he really not suspect the emotional abuse and neglect? Couldn't he have sent a gentle magical reminder or even a letter to warn the Dursleys that someone was watching? What if Harry had grown up bitter, broken, and devoid of love? Is that really the right soil in which to grow a hero? Number 5. What do wizarding children do before age 11? At 11, the letter arrives and life changes forever. But before that, where are they? What do they do? We know Harry went to a normal school because he was kept away from the magical world. But what about children from wizarding families? Do they learn to read and write at home? Are there magical kindergartens run by the ministry? If parents teach them, who checks the quality of their education? What happens if a pure-blood kid shows up at Hogwarts unable to read? And why is this never mentioned? Number 6. Why does Harry need glasses? Harry Potter can do so much: cast spells, fly a broom, cheat death, wear an invisibility cloak, and speak Parseltongue, and yet he can't fix nearsightedness. This is a world with bone-growing potions, regrown limbs, and cures for deadly curses. Are there really no spells to fix vision? Or does Harry keep the glasses as a symbol of identity? But then why risk wearing them in a Quidditch match where a single fall could destroy them? And his eyesight? Number 7. How is a Horcrux made? Perhaps the darkest mystery of all. We know a Horcrux is created after committing murder, but how exactly? What spell is used? What are the steps? What are the words? Rowling admitted she knows the specifics but chose not to include them in the books. According to her, editors felt the ritual was too dark, even for the later volumes. But considering these books feature torture, death, executions, and destruction, we have to ask, what could possibly be so horrifying about the Horcrux ritual that it had to be kept secret? Number 8. Why didn't the Marauder's map reveal Peter Pettigrew? In Prisoner of Azkaban, Fred and George hand Harry the Marauder's map. Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs are proud to present. It says, revealing every soul at Hogwarts in real time, every name, every footstep, including Sirius Black. But never once does it show Peter Pettigrew. For years he's slept in the Gryffindor dormitory, curled up in Ron's bed, and yet not one twin ever noticed a strange name beside their brother at night. Not once did Harry, staring at the map, ask, "Who's Peter Pettigrew walking next to Ron at 2 a.m? The map wasn't fooled by animagus magic. It revealed Barty Crouch Jr. under Polyjuice Potion in Goblet of Fire. It showed Sirius in dog form. It even showed people hiding under invisibility cloaks. So why not Peter? He was one of the map's creators. Did Wormtail build in a failsafe to mask himself? But that doesn't fit. Why would the others, James, Sirius, Remus, allow it? More likely, J.K. Rowling overlooked the logic, because if Harry had glanced just once and seen a dead man walking beside Ron, the entire plot would have collapsed. The truth was always there, on parchment, but no one looked hard enough to read it. Number 9. Why aren't kids checked for time turners? In Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione reveals the secret. I've been using a time turner to go to several classes at once. Dumbledore gave it to her. A device capable of rewinding time, entrusted to a 13-year-old. No ministry agents checked her usage. No spells tracked her jumps. In one night, she and Harry used it to alter the timeline, free Sirius Black, and save Buckbeak. All with zero oversight, no alarms, no consequences. If 2 students could change the course of history with one turn, what stopped anyone else from doing worse? After that year, time turners vanish. Not broken, not banned, just erased. In Order of the Phoenix, the entire stock is said to be destroyed during the battle at the Department of Mysteries. Convenient, no hearings, no debate, as if the ministry wanted to forget they ever existed. Maybe they feared what it revealed, that they trusted dangerous artifacts to children, that they couldn't control time, even when it was spinning right under their noses. Or maybe the timeline's already been rewritten so many times we were never meant to notice. Number 10. How does the wizarding economy actually function? The Weasleys can't afford new wands or robes. Ron's books are second-hand. His pet rat is a hand-me-down. And yet, Molly cooks full meals, they own a house, and Fred and George later open a booming joke shop in Diagon Alley. But where does the money come from? What is the economic engine behind a world where food appears on tables and objects repair themselves with a flick? Wizards don't seem to farm, manufacture, or trade on a large scale. They have Gringotts, but what fuels the vaults? What's the wizarding equivalent of a paycheck? St. Mungo's heals without billing. Hogwarts teaches hundreds of students, yet no one ever pays tuition. The ministry is massive, with entire departments like magical games and sports, or the misuse of Muggle artifacts office. Are taxes involved? Does Dumbledore submit budgets? Or are galleons simply conjured into existence, despite Gamp's law saying food is the only thing that can't be created from nothing? As Hermione says, you can't conjure money out of thin air. That's one of the 5 principal exceptions to Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration. But if money can't be created and nothing is really sold, then what keeps this glittering system alive? Maybe, just maybe, the real magic isn't in the spells, but in the illusion that everything's been thought through. Number 11. Why aren't talking portraits considered real people? In Deathly Hallows, when Harry returns to Hogwarts, it's not a living wizard who gives him orders. It's a painting. "Go to the Ravenclaw common room," says the portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black. And Harry obeys. These portraits aren't decorations. They offer guidance, strategy, even comfort. Dumbledore's portrait in the headmaster's office continues advising Snape after death. "You must be the one to kill me, Severus," he says, "not in memory, but in real time. This isn't a recording, it's a conversation." So why do wizards insist portraits aren't alive? They remember, they think, they change. Sir Cadogan gets offended. The fat lady sulks after being slashed by Sirius. Even Armando Dippet, long dead, offers context about Hogwarts' past. These figures react to new events, not just replay the old ones. They are more than paintings, yet no one gives them rights, responsibilities, or even real respect. "It's just a portrait," is the constant refrain. But is it? Maybe that's the real magic. Maybe portraits are something dangerous, too close to resurrection, a way to keep power even after death. What if a portrait could testify in court, or reveal secrets the living wanted buried? A portrait doesn't age, it doesn't forget, it watches. Perhaps wizards call them copies, not because it's true, but because anything else would make them face a terrifying question. Can a soul live in paint? Number 12. Didn't Voldemort use liquid luck about? In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry drinks Felix Felicis and everything bends to his will. Slughorn just happens to be in the mood to talk. Hagrid's door opens at the perfect time. Even Aragog's funeral becomes a gift. "I should point out that this is a very unusual situation," Slughorn says, baffled by his own willingness. "It's a miracle in a bottle." So why didn't Voldemort ever use it? The man who split his soul 7 times never thought to use a few drops of luck before facing death? He had access. He controlled Snape, master of potion making. He had the resources. He planned for years. Wouldn't he have brewed barrels of it before attacking the Ministry? Or at least taken some before the final battle at Hogwarts? Instead, he trusted loyalty and fear. Bellatrix, Lucius, Wormtail, all fallible, all afraid. And yet he never considered making his fate a little luckier. Even the Order of the Phoenix ignored it. Dumbledore, always one step ahead, never kept a vial of Felix for emergencies. He gave a single bottle to Harry and never spoke of it again. Was it rare? Possibly. Dangerous in large amounts? Maybe. But none of that is in the books, and when magic can cheat death, manipulate memory, and bend time, the idea that no one thought to mass-produce liquid luck sounds like the most unrealistic magic of all. Number 13, why isn't magical first aid taught in Hogwarts? In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, a 12-year-old boy is left paralyzed after a rogue bludger breaks every bone in his arm. Gilderoy Lockhart tries to heal it, but instead removes the bones entirely. "Let's not be squeamish," he says with a smile, and then sends Harry off to Madame Pomfrey. No emergency protocol, no student or professor with real medical training nearby. In a school where trolls roam the dungeons and cursed artifacts circulate freely, there's no class teaching how to mend a cut, treat magical burns, or brew basic antidotes. Why? When Ron is poisoned in Half-Blood Prince, it's a miracle that Harry acts quickly. He shoves a bezoar into Ron's mouth because he remembered a random lesson from Snape, not because he was taught how to react. This is an antidote to most poisons, Snape had said long ago, but there was no follow-up, no first aid drills, no magical CPR. And what if Harry hadn't been there? What if he had hesitated? One more second and Ron would have died in the middle of the Gryffindor common room, surrounded by friends who wouldn't know what to do. Even during the Triwizard Tournament, Hogwarts sends children to face dragons and mermaids, yet doesn't teach them how to heal a sprained ankle. Hermione, the brightest student of her age, knew how to petrify, blast, and transfigure, but not how to stop internal bleeding. Everything depends on Madame Pomfrey, a single, overworked nurse. One woman for hundreds of students. Hogwarts teaches you how to duel, but not how to save the person you accidentally cursed. In a place so full of danger, that's not just careless, that's a design flaw, or worse, a tradition. Number 14. Why isn't there mass protection against Dementors? Dementors were not just monsters. They were shadows with purpose, used by the Ministry itself to guard Azkaban, the most feared prison in the wizarding world. But those same creatures were uncontrollable. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Lupin warned, they don't care who you are, they'll suck out your soul just the same. Why then was there never a serious, organized effort to defend the wizarding population from them? When they swarmed the Hogwarts Express, attacking innocent children, the only line of defense was a single professor and his Patronus. No charms on the train, no protective wards, just luck and Remus Lupin. Patronus charm is powerful, yes, but rare. It requires not just magical skill, but emotional strength. Even Hermione Granger, one of the brightest witches of her age, struggled to cast it at first. In Order of the Phoenix, we learn that most adult wizards can't conjure a full Patronus at all. So why has the wizarding world placed so much faith in a spell only a few can master? Where are the enchanted talismans, the mass-produced potions, the wearable wards that could at least soften a Dementor's effect? If George and Fred Weasley could invent extendable ears and skiving snack boxes, couldn't the magical government come up with something a little more useful than wishful thinking? And the attacks weren't just accidents. In Half-Blood Prince, Scrimgeour admits that the Dementors have joined the Dark Lord. He says this almost casually, as if announcing bad weather. By then, they had already been used to spread fear across Britain, attacking Muggles, breeding in the dark, plunging towns into cold and despair. Yet even after that, the Ministry had no emergency plan, no public warnings, no official training. Ordinary witches and wizards were left to face soul-eaters with trembling wands and desperate hope. Perhaps it wasn't just negligence. Perhaps fear served a purpose. The Ministry once used Dementors as enforcers. What if they never intended to protect the people from them? What if control through terror was the point all along? After all, Dolores Umbridge didn't hesitate to unleash Dementors on Harry in Order of the Phoenix, not to defend the law, but to silence a 15-year-old boy who dared speak the truth. Number 15. What is the veil in the Department of Mysteries? The Department of Mysteries was always wrapped in shadows, not just literally, but in the way it lived in the whispers of the wizarding world. Hidden deep beneath the Ministry of Magic, guarded by time and bureaucratic silence, it held many strange rooms, each devoted to a force beyond ordinary comprehension. But among all these secrets, one stood alone in its eerie simplicity: the veil. Draped like a tattered curtain in a sunken stone archway, it did not hiss or roar like other magical anomalies. It whispered, it shimmered, and it claimed Sirius Black. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the battle in the Department of Mysteries reached its haunting climax in the Death Chamber. The duel between Sirius and Bellatrix Lestrange could have ended in a dozen predictable ways, but J.K. Rowling did not choose a killing curse. She chose the veil, a stumble, a fall, a disappearance. Only the archway seemed to be there, the veil fluttering slightly as though somebody had just passed through it. This subtle moment, quiet, tragic, and final, raised far more questions than it answered. What is the veil? Why does it whisper? Why does it kill? For a world so rich in magical theory, the veil remains an enigma that no character seems able or willing to explain. Even in the heart of the Ministry, no unspeakable offers insight into its nature. Luna Lovegood, who often speaks truths others fear to voice, is one of the few who admits to hearing the voices from beyond. She tells Harry that it's just beyond the veil when he thinks he hears whispering. But what is it? A dimension? A soul? A trick of grief? No one knows, and the fact that no one knows feels deliberate. Harry, of all people, senses the veil's pull before Sirius's death. He hears the whispers. He steps toward it. He feels something inside calling. Hermione tries to stop him, insisting there's nothing there, but the veil disagrees. Its magic is not merely mysterious, it is personal. It does not attack, it beckons. Its power is in seduction, not violence. That a 15-year-old boy and a ghost-haunted girl like Luna are drawn to it suggests it resonates with something deep and universal. Loss, perhaps, or longing. What makes the veil even more disturbing is that it does not kill in any known way. There is no green light, no flash, no scream. When Sirius passes through it, he does not collapse in agony or vanish in a burst of flame. He simply disappears and is declared dead. It is Remus Lupin who delivers the verdict with unbearable calm. He's gone. Just like that, as though passing through that whispering fabric was enough to sever a soul from the world. But why? How? The magical world has always had a defined relationship with death. There are ghosts, inferi, and Horcruxes. There is the Resurrection Stone and the Philosopher's Stone, and yet the veil defies all of them. Ghosts, as nearly headless Nick explains, are imprints of the soul left behind by wizards too afraid to move on. But Sirius does not become a ghost. He does not linger. He crosses and he is lost. So the veil must lead somewhere. But where? Some fans speculate that the veil is a physical manifestation of the border between life and death, that the archway is a threshold. But then why can it be approached so casually? Why does the Ministry leave such a powerful artifact in a sunken amphitheatre with no visible guards? Why are children allowed to walk so close to it, to hear its call? There are no runes, no barriers, not even a plaque. The veil exists in plain view, yet cloaked in complete obscurity. Perhaps the veil is older than the Ministry itself, an artifact from a forgotten age when magic was raw and less understood. There is no record in the books of its origin, no mention of who built the stone archway, or how it came to rest in the Department of Mysteries. This silence is not just troubling, it is unnatural. Even in a world that catalogues the ingredients of every potion and the mechanics of every spell, the veil remains unnamed and unexplained. Could it be a relic of the unspeakable's own making, that a secretive class of magical researchers who tamper with time, memory, love, and death itself? If so, what went wrong? Did someone die during its creation? Was the veil once part of a ritual or an experiment? There is something ceremonial about the way it hangs, like the black curtains at a funeral or the tapestries that separate the living from the dead in ancient magical rites. Perhaps it was never meant to be a portal, but became one through tragic misuse. The fact that Sirius dies by simply passing through it challenges the fundamental laws of magical death. Even Avada Kedavra, the most feared spell in the wizarding world, requires intent and direction. The veil requires none. It takes. It does not ask. It does not care. The death it brings is impersonal and absolute, and in that it is more terrifying than any spell, because it suggests that magic has corners even wizards do not dare to light. Why then does the Ministry keep it? Is it for study? For punishment? The Department of Mysteries is built on the idea that certain forces, death, love, space, thought, are beyond control but worthy of observation. Maybe the veil is not there to be used, but simply to be watched, to see who hears it, to see who answers. Maybe it's a test, and those who fall through it become the Ministry's unanswered questions. Number 16. Why is Avada Kedavra never tracked? There is a spell in the wizarding world that needs no introduction. Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. A streak of green light, a rush of cold air, and a heartbeat stops forever. Unlike other spells, it cannot be blocked. It has no counter-curse, and most importantly, it is unforgivable. A single use, even once, earns a one-way trip to Azkaban for life. Yet in J.K. Rowling's universe, this most feared of spells is cloaked in an astonishing lack of surveillance. For a world that keeps track of every underage magic flick, that can identify the breaking of the statute of secrecy, that runs an entire department of magical law enforcement, it is deeply strange, disturbing even, that no one seems to be watching Avada Kedavra. We know, for example, that underage magic is closely monitored. When Harry accidentally inflates his Aunt Marge in The Prisoner of Azkaban, the Ministry reacts immediately. They don't need someone to file a report. They detect the magic, identify the source, and take action. Even in the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry casts a Patronus in Little Whinging to defend himself and Dudley from Dementors, the Ministry dispatches a Howler and moves to expel him from Hogwarts within hours. We have received intelligence that a spell was cast at 23 minutes past 9 this evening in a Muggle-inhabited area, says the letter. But compare that with what happens in the woods, in the Goblet of Fire, where Barty Crouch Jr. murders his father with Avada Kedavra, and nothing. No immediate magical trace, no swooping owls, no investigators. Silence. If the Ministry can detect a levitation spell in a non-magical household, why can't they detect the use of Avada Kedavra, which produces an unmistakable signature of death? It's not as though this curse is subtle. The green light is iconic, theatrical even. The spell severs the soul. It leaves no physical wound but causes instant death. The Ministry has entire divisions dedicated to magical detection, including the improper use of magic office, yet somehow the deadliest spell in existence slips through undetected, time and again. During the First and Second Wizarding Wars, Death Eaters unleashed Avada Kedavra as casually as one might flick dust off a sleeve. In The Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore dies atop the Astronomy Tower, Snape casts the curse, and the flash of green light can be seen across the grounds. No trace is mentioned, no detection, only chaos. There's no mention of a magical alarm going off at the Ministry, no mention of investigators storming Hogwarts in pursuit of the caster. One of the most famous wizards of the age has just been murdered, and no one tracks the spell that did it. One might argue that the chaos of war makes tracking difficult, but that does not explain the lack of basic infrastructure. The Ministry does not even pretend to have a system for Avada Kedavra. It is treated like a moral issue, a curse that should never be used, but not a logistical one. There is no spell registration, no magical GPS, no traceable curse signatures that bind the act to the caster. And yet we know that other spells leave traces. When Dumbledore investigates the destroyed house of the Riddles in The Half-Blood Prince, he speaks of the residue of a killing curse. But residue is only useful after the fact. It does nothing to prevent the act or identify the murderer in real time. The consequences are enormous. Consider the case of Cedric Diggory, killed in the graveyard by Peter Pettigrew on Voldemort's orders. Cedric dies instantly. There are no repercussions for the spell. The Ministry later pretends the boy was killed by an accident, and no record of Pettigrew's act is ever mentioned. The unforgivable curse has been cast. A student has died, and yet no alarm sounds, no magical system records the event. If Harry had not returned with Cedric's body, would the world have even known what happened? "Kill the spare," says Voldemort, and with those words, a student's life is erased. The legal system of the wizarding world remains oblivious. Another example is the Department of Mysteries battle. Avada Kedavra is used multiple times. Bellatrix Lestrange kills Sirius Black with a blast that sends him through the veil. Lucius Malfoy and others cast curses indiscriminately. No mention is made of consequences or even detection. If the Ministry can't detect Avada Kedavra being cast within its own building, under the very nose of its departments, what hope is there for enforcement in the wider world? Why is there no magical equivalent of ballistics, no traceable wand signature database for unforgivable curses? We know wands are unique. Ollivander says, "The wand chooses the wizard." And in The Goblet of Fire, during the Priori Incantatem sequence, Voldemort's wand reveals every murder it committed, including Cedric, Frank Bryce, Bertha Jorkins. So clearly the magic exists to trace deadly spells after the fact. Why does the Ministry not implement this ability proactively? It becomes even more absurd when we recall that house elves can detect when Harry's wand casts a charm, as in the Chamber of Secrets when Dobby frames him for a levitation spell. The Ministry believes Harry did it and sends him a warning letter. If that level of precision exists for a levitation spell, why not for murder? Why is the most terrifying curse in existence treated with less surveillance than a lumos? The uncomfortable truth may be that the Ministry of Magic doesn't want to know. In the Deathly Hallows, Voldemort takes over the Ministry, and under his regime, unforgivable curses are openly practiced. The lines between law and crime blur, but even before his rise, it is clear that the Ministry is reactive, not proactive. They punish reported behavior, not detected behavior. The system relies on witnesses and confessions, not evidence. In a world of magic where truth spells and magical signatures exist, this is nonsensical. Number 17. Why don't students learn Apparition sooner? Of all the strange inconsistencies buried in the magical world of Harry Potter, one remains particularly jarring to any reader who stops to examine the structure of Hogwarts' educational priorities. The moment a young witch or wizard sets foot inside the castle, as a wide-eyed first year, they are handed a wand, a list of supplies and, rather incredibly, a broomstick. It's not optional. Flying lessons are mandatory. Madam Hooch assembles the 11-year-olds on the lawn, gives a few warnings about broken bones, and then promptly sends them hurtling into the sky. Neville Longbottom is injured in his very first attempt, rising uncontrollably before tumbling to the ground and breaking his wrist. And yet this is considered an acceptable risk, even a rite of passage. Broomstick flying, with all its physical danger and chaos, is introduced in the very first weeks of school. But transfiguration, through apparition, known in the wizarding world as transgression of space, is treated entirely differently. This ability, which allows a person to instantly transport themselves to another location, is not even introduced until students reach the age of 17. And even then it's optional. Apparition lessons are not conducted by Hogwarts staff but by a ministry official brought in specifically for the task. The magic is labelled advanced, the risks of splinching are emphasised, and the lesson is treated as a privilege, not a right. Yet, what is apparition if not the most valuable survival skill a magical being can learn? Consider the events of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where Dumbledore and Harry apparate effortlessly to the seaside cave that holds one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Without apparition, that journey would have required hours and exposed them to untold danger. Later, in Deathly Hallows, Harry, Ron, and Hermione depend on apparition repeatedly as they flee Death Eaters. Hermione even carries an enchanted bag stuffed with supplies, fully aware that their only defense is the ability to vanish at a moment's notice. Apparition is not a luxury, it's a lifeline, and yet it remains withheld from students during the years when their education is forming and their habits are solidifying. Why then does the curriculum at Hogwarts place immediate emphasis on flying, an archaic, noisy, and risky means of transportation, while apparition is locked behind layers of age, bureaucracy, and fear? Why must 11-year-olds be tossed into the sky with little more than a shouted "up," while the spell that could one day save their life is deferred until the brink of adulthood? Let's examine the risks. Flying is dangerous. In Philosopher's Stone, Madam Hooch warns students not to move until she returns, but Draco Malfoy takes off anyway, resulting in the discovery of Harry's natural flying talent. This moment becomes pivotal, launching Harry into the world of Quidditch and giving him his first sense of confidence at Hogwarts. But is a sporting accident really worth institutionalizing this practice? Children fall, bones break, and yet broomsticks are considered traditional and necessary. In contrast, apparition carries the threat of splinching, accidental separation of body parts, but the effects are reversible and well documented. If anything, flying seems more physically traumatic than teleportation. There is an unspoken assumption in the wizarding world that danger is acceptable when it is tied to tradition. Broomsticks are part of magical folklore, symbolizing everything from witchcraft to freedom. Apparition, however, is precise, technical, and difficult to regulate. It lacks the romance of soaring over the forbidden forest or chasing a golden snitch. But should whimsy be prioritized over practicality? Should tradition override efficiency? Especially when lives are at stake? The most revealing clue comes not from a Hogwarts professor but from the Ministry of Magic itself. In Half-Blood Prince, Wilkie Twycross, a ministry instructor, begins teaching 6th years the principles of apparition. The lessons are stiff, formal, and bound by ministry policy. Students practice in a designated area with ministry oversight, and penalties for early or unauthorized apparition are harsh. It becomes clear that control, not safety, is the ministry's true concern. The idea that teenagers might use apparition to escape class, sneak into Hogsmeade, or bypass castle security is not unfounded. Fred and George Weasley, notorious for their pranks, would undoubtedly have used the skill for mischief had they learned it earlier. But the implication is troubling. The governing body of the magical world is so wary of youthful autonomy that it deliberately delays teaching a spell that could mean the difference between life and death. This is not about readiness, it's about control. Contrast this with the urgency of flight, when Voldemort returns, when the Death Eaters rise, when the wizarding world fractures into chaos. How does the Order of the Phoenix respond? They apparate. They do not mount broomsticks to fly across counties, they vanish and reappear. In the Battle of the Seven Potters, every participant except Harry relies on apparition as a critical means of evasion and protection. Broomsticks become liabilities, slow and visible. Apparition becomes the only effective way to survive. The irony is biting. Students are taught to fly in first year, but they will rarely use broomsticks in life or death situations. They are not taught to apparate until after they have potentially already entered a war. Even during the Tri-Wizard tournament, a deadly series of tasks involving dragons, merpeople, and a cursed maze, there is no mention of apparition being taught as a precaution. Cedric Diggory's death could not have been prevented by a broomstick. Perhaps it could have been by apparition. What makes this omission more perplexing is that Hogwarts teaches incredibly advanced magic in other areas at surprisingly young ages. First years are introduced to levitation, transfiguration, and even simple forms of hexes and jinxes. By third year, students are learning to repel Dementors with the Patronus Charm, a spell that even adult wizards struggle to cast. Hermione Granger masters this charm at age 13. Clearly, Hogwarts does not shy away from teaching difficult or dangerous magic when it deems the outcome worthwhile. Number 18. Why was Hogwarts barely guarded in early books? In the first year alone, an 11-year-old boy walked past a three-headed dog, fell through a trapdoor, and was nearly killed by a man possessed by the most dangerous dark wizard in history. He did all of this without a single adult noticing. No guards, no wards, no protective charms. Just a half-blind caretaker, a gamekeeper with a pink umbrella, and a school that seemed to be daring its students to die. From the moment Harry Potter stepped into Hogwarts, the message was clear. This was not a sanctuary. This was a trial by fire disguised as an education. Hogwarts was ancient, vast, enchanted beyond comprehension, and utterly porous to danger. Even in Philosopher's Stone, Miscue, when a literal monster is hidden on the third-floor corridor, the warning Dumbledore gives is not to implement lockdown or summon the Ministry. He simply states, anyone who does not wish to die a most painful death would do well to avoid the third-floor corridor. As if a sign would stop a curious child. There are no enchanted boundaries, no detection wards. It's a school protected, if anything, by the illusion of safety. The dangers are constant and escalating. By the time of Chamber of Secrets, students are petrified in corridors. A basilisk, bred for killing, slithers unseen through the plumbing. Not once does anyone suggest evacuating the castle. Professors wander the halls with lanterns, but there is no magical alarm, no sealed gates, no defensive spells flaring into action. When Dumbledore is temporarily removed, the castle is left even more vulnerable, as though the idea of external threat never occurred to anyone in a position of authority. The question must be asked, where are the enchantments? Hogwarts was supposedly built with countless protections by the four founders themselves. We are told in Goblet of Fire that it is unplottable and protected by a number of spells to prevent Muggles from entering, but those protections seem curiously ineffective when facing a threat from within. The enemy doesn't come from the outside, he lives inside the castle walls, often as a student, a ghost, or a cursed object, smuggled in plain sight. Filch, the squib caretaker, patrols the hallways with a lantern, hoping to catch children out of bed. He cannot perform magic, he cannot sense dark energy, he cannot duel, cannot defend. His most powerful asset is his temper, and yet he is the primary authority walking the corridors at night. What does this say about Hogwarts' priorities? Filch is more a symbol of punishment than protection, more a relic of archaic discipline than a tool of safety. Why was he ever deemed enough? Hagrid, gentle Hagrid, is trusted with guarding the front grounds, armed only with a pink umbrella concealing fragments of his broken wand. His love for magical creatures makes him dangerous, not safe. In Prisoner of Azkaban, he brings hippogriffs into a class of 13-year-olds without proper warnings. One slashes Draco Malfoy within minutes. Later, the same man is entrusted with watching over an entire school boundary. Why does no one question this? In Goblet of Fire, Alistair Moody, a seasoned auror with unparalleled paranoia, enters the school, or so we are led to believe. He is in fact Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise, having easily infiltrated the castle using Polyjuice Potion and a stolen identity. Not only does he fool the faculty, he is given a teaching position. For an entire year, he manipulates Harry and tampers with the sacred rules of the Triwizard Tournament. How did he get in? Where were the checks? Not even Snape, master of suspicion, suspected the impostor. No magical fingerprinting, no identity charms. Hogwarts, it seems, never thought to ask. The Forbidden Forest, situated just meters from the student dormitories, contains centaurs who resent humans, giant spiders who devour flesh, and a host of other creatures lethal to even trained wizards, and yet students are sent in as punishment. In Philosopher's Stone, first years Harry, Hermione, Neville and Draco are told to wander it at night, unarmed and unsupervised apart from Hagrid. Within minutes, they encounter Voldemort drinking unicorn blood. How is this considered discipline? Why is a forest filled with death adjacent to his school, and why does no magical barrier exist between them? Tom Riddle's diary entered the castle in Chamber of Secrets via the school supplies of a first-year student. No protective charms detected the dark artifact. No teacher sensed its growing influence. It possessed Ginny Weasley, nearly killed several students, and reopened the legendary chamber. Hogwarts had no countermeasures for this, not even a professor specializing in dark artifacts. Gilderoy Lockhart, a fraud with no real skill, was hired instead, and this was not an anomaly. The defense against the dark arts post was cursed, a fact known to Dumbledore, yet no contingency plan was ever created. In Prisoner of Azkaban, the Ministry sends Dementors, soulless creatures that feed on fear, to patrol the grounds. They attack students, they roam freely. One nearly kisses Harry on a Quidditch field. No teacher intervenes. Dumbledore protests their presence but offers no magical alternative. Why, in a school boasting thousands of years of enchantments, must safety depend on the whims of government creatures? Dumbledore himself tells them, "You will not enter the castle without my permission." But again, no magical proof exists to stop them if they choose to disobey. The Room of Requirement appears in Order of the Phoenix, a magical chamber though unknown to most of the staff. A room that can become anything. It hides Dumbledore's army, A student militia formed to teach themselves defense because the school has failed them. Dolores Umbridge, High Inquisitor, tortures students and controls the curriculum, but again, no adult protection exists. The children are left to teach each other the spells that might one day save their lives. They learn not because Hogwarts prepared them, but because it left them no choice. In Half-Blood Prince, Death Eaters enter the castle through a pair of vanishing cabinets. This is not an army marching through the front gate. It is a silent infiltration that happens under the noses of teachers, prefects, ghosts, and magical creatures. Even the Marauder's map, a student creation, is more effective at tracking intruders than anything the professors possess. Albus Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard alive, knows Draco Malfoy is planning something, and yet he allows the danger to unfold, hoping to understand Malfoy's conscience. This is not protection, it's a gamble. Snape makes the unbreakable vow to protect Draco and ultimately kills Dumbledore, but no magical safeguard detects this betrayal, and no structural spell is triggered by the headmaster's death. Hogwarts simply allows it to happen. There are no contingency plans, no summoned reinforcements. A school protected by portraits, talking hats, enchanted suits of armor, none of them act. The building is silent, watching, waiting, offering no defense of its own. The Battle of Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows finally shows what the school is capable of. McGonagall awakens the statues, Flitwick casts protective charms, magical shields rise over the towers, the school fights back. But why now? Why not during any of the prior threats? Did Hogwarts need to be in flames before it remembered it had teeth? And if such power existed all along, why was it withheld for so many years while children died and evil grew? One possible explanation lies in the design of the school itself. Perhaps Hogwarts was not made to be safe. Perhaps it was made to test, to forge, to filter. The founders built the castle with sentient staircases, hidden passages, dangerous beasts, and sentient paintings. Maybe they wanted students to adapt, to struggle, to face danger and rise. Gryffindor's lion heart, Slytherin's ambition, Ravenclaw's wit, Hufflepuff's endurance. None of these are cultivated in sterile halls. They are born in chaos. But even if this was the intent, does it justify the cost? Does it explain why 11-year-olds are sent to duel trolls in bathrooms or battle enchanted chess pieces the size of horses? Harry faced death nearly every year, and his teachers offered him riddles instead of rescue. The school's attitude seems to be, survive, and you'll be stronger. Die, and you weren't meant for this world. The absence of structured protection becomes more suspicious when we consider Dumbledore's reputation. He defeated Grindelwald, he led the Order of the Phoenix, he had access to powerful magic, loyal allies, and centuries of knowledge. Yet he placed his trust in prophecy, in destiny, in Harry himself. He told Snape, "You must be the one to kill me." He believed sacrifice was the key to victory, but while this philosophy may suit a war, it has no place in a school. It's tempting to see Hogwarts as a reflection of Dumbledore's worldview. He believed in giving people chances. He allowed the Marauders to run wild. He trusted a werewolf to teach children. He gave Severus Snape, a former Death Eater, access to the heart of the castle. He believed people could change, but trust is not the same as security. And faith is not a defense against a killing curse. The truth is, Hogwarts is not a school in the conventional sense. It is an ancient, living thing, a fortress of trials. It does not coddle, it does not shield, it forces growth through trauma. And perhaps that's the greatest danger of all. Because in its silence, in its watchful indifference, Hogwarts teaches its students one lasting lesson. In this world, you are only as safe as your magic allows. And if your magic fails, no one is coming. Number 19. Why don't wizards heal muggles? In the soft silence of the Hogwarts hospital wing, where Madame Pomfrey once fixed shattered bones, regrew skin, and mended broken minds with the ease of a breath, a great paradox lingers. The magic that restored Harry Potter's nearly destroyed body after a Quidditch accident, the charms that soothed Ron's slashed arms after confronting the chessboard, the potions that revived Hermione after the basilisk's gaze. This power exists in quiet abundance, yet beyond the castle's ancient walls, in the hospitals of Muggle London, children still gasp their last breaths beneath sterile white sheets, ravaged by illnesses that magic could cure in seconds. Wizards watch from the shadows and do nothing. Why? St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries boasts specialists in spell damage, potion poisoning, and even obscure curses that rot flesh or contort bones. The healers walk its halls robed in green, guided by years of knowledge inaccessible to the Muggle world. They can repair collapsed lungs with a flick, cleanse veins of venom with a vial of clear liquid, and restore shattered spines without surgery. They have treated werewolf bites and unforgivable curses, but not once does the canon mention a wizard crossing over to a Muggle ward to place a gentle hand on a dying child's chest. Magic stops at the border between the magical and non-magical, as though an invisible wall forbids compassion. This silence is especially eerie in light of the power demonstrated throughout the series. When Arthur Weasley is mauled by Nagini in Order of the Phoenix, the healers at St. Mungo's are able to keep him alive despite magical snake venom seeping through his veins. "There's nothing else we can do," Hermione once says in the tent during the Horcrux hunt, but only because they were on the run. In regular circumstances, with access to a well-stocked wizarding hospital, the magical world seems to possess cures for everything short of death itself. Even then, ghosts linger. But no wizard, not even the most rebellious, decides to defy the statute for the sake of mercy. No underground movement appears to heal Muggles in secret. Not even Albus Dumbledore, the supposed champion of both worlds, makes a single recorded effort. The Statute of Secrecy, enacted in 1692, forbids the exposure of the magical world to Muggles. It does not, however, explicitly forbid healing them. Wizards do modify memories, as we see in Chamber of Secrets, when Gilderoy Lockhart boasts of erasing entire recollections. Obliviation is common, routine, and surgical. A wizard could heal a child, whisper, obliviate, and vanish into the night. No one would ever know. The logistics are entirely possible. So why doesn't it happen? Perhaps the most devastating example lies in the fate of Lily Potter's sister, Petunia Dursley. Petunia, who grew up watching her sister receive a letter from Hogwarts, begged Dumbledore to admit her too. She longed for magic, resented it when it was denied, and carried bitterness for years. But what if Petunia had fallen ill? Would Lily have begged Snape to help her? Would the Order of the Phoenix have intervened? Based on what we know, the answer is no. Even familial ties do not permit breaches of secrecy. Magic is not just hidden from Muggles, it is withheld, even when it could save lives. We must remember that magic is not rationed. There is no limit to the number of potions one can brew, no magical energy that runs dry. Severus Snape brewed complex antidotes as a schoolteacher. Madame Pomfrey kept endless supplies of restorative draughts. Even Fred and George Weasley, mere pranksters, produced a portable swamp and various complex substances in their joke shop. The magical world is not lacking in resources, it is lacking in will. The consequences of this separation are profound. In the summer of 1996, while Voldemort prepares to unleash war, children in Muggle hospitals die of leukemia, cystic fibrosis, and brain tumours. Wizards, who can remove a curse from a person's heart, watch the news with detachment. "You think the dead we loved ever truly leave us?" Dumbledore once said. Yet the living Muggles are left to die alone. Is it fear, or is it something darker? What frightens the magical world into such inertia? If we examine the Ministry of Magic, we find cowardice, bureaucracy, and pride. Fudge refused to acknowledge Voldemort's return because it would disrupt his narrative. Scrimgeour used Harry as a symbol rather than listen to his warnings. Magical authority does not favour moral action, it favours control. Perhaps the true reason wizards never heal Muggles is that healing builds bridges, and bridges invite curiosity. The more lives they save, the more attention they draw, and attention brings danger. It is telling that even the most radical groups in wizarding history have not questioned this silence. The Order of the Phoenix, focused on protecting both worlds from Voldemort, never once debates aiding Muggles in a medical sense. The Death Eaters view Muggles as inferior, but even Dumbledore's army, a group of enlightened young witches and wizards, never thinks to use their skills for anonymous good. Hermione, the daughter of Muggle dentists, never raises the question. She fights for the rights of house elves, but not Muggles suffering from terminal illness. There are those who argue that interfering would cause chaos, that Muggles cannot understand magic, and any rescue would trigger panic or dependence, but this rings hollow. Wizards are already experts in hiding. They enchant their homes, travel invisibly, and erase memories as easily as blinking. If a dying mother could be saved, would she care whether the cure came wrapped in a cloak? Would a father watching his child waste away ask, "Who brewed the potion?" Or would he simply weep with gratitude? There is also the matter of magical ethics. In Half-Blood Prince, Horace Slughorn describes Felix Felicis as a dangerous potion, not because of what it does, but because of how it might be abused. The magical world has boundaries, and perhaps healing Muggles feels like crossing a line. But again, this is a self-imposed restriction. Wizards use magic for personal convenience constantly, to cook, to clean, to apparate, instead of walk. But to save a life, that, apparently, is too far. Even when magic is used on Muggles, it is rarely for their benefit. Consider Marjorie Dursley inflated like a balloon, or the Muggle campground owners who suffered memory modification in Goblet of Fire. Muggles are tampered with, silenced, and forgotten, but never aided. Even magical creatures receive more organized advocacy. Hagrid risks everything to protect a baby dragon. Newt Scamander writes volumes about preserving magical species. But who writes about preserving Muggle lives? The cruelty lies not in intent, but in apathy. The magical world is not actively evil toward Muggles, it is dismissive. Muggles are quaint, backward, and irrelevant. Their pain is invisible. This echoes chillingly in Voldemort's ideology, that power justifies superiority. But even those who oppose him unwittingly accept his assumptions. They simply draw the line elsewhere. Dumbledore, revered as the greatest wizard of his age, once said, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are far more than our abilities." But his choices never included saving Muggles from disease. He moved armies to defeat Grindelwald, he sacrificed his own hand to destroy a Horcrux, but he never organized a clandestine healing network. He could have appointed a secret team within the Order to aid Muggle hospitals. He never did. The most haunting realization is that some wizards may not even consider the option. So deeply embedded is the idea of separation that it becomes a blind spot. To question it would require unraveling the entire framework of magical society, and perhaps that is why no one speaks, because to admit that they could save millions, and chose not to, would shatter their moral superiority. Even in the modern wizarding world, as shown in The Cursed Child, there is no mention of integrating the two worlds. Technology is still viewed with suspicion. Muggles remain on the other side of the glass, waving helplessly while wizards walk past with healing in their hands. The world has changed, but not enough. There is no scene in the entire Harry Potter canon where a wizard heals a Muggle with compassion, not even one. That absence is louder than any spell. It is a wound in the story, a question that burns at its core. What is the value of magic if it is only used to protect your own? Harry, who grew up in the Muggle world, who suffered at the hands of the Dursleys, but also lived in a Muggle hospital after the car crash that killed his parents, never suggests healing those left behind. He saves his friends, his school, his world. But the world of his childhood, the one where he slept in a cupboard while neighbours died of cancer, he never goes back, not even to try. And so the silence remains. Behind it, a child dies, a mother weeps, and somewhere in a green-robed corridor, a potion sits untouched, waiting. Number 20. Why was the Half-Blood Prince never identified earlier? Of all the riddles in the magical world of Harry Potter, few are as quietly unsettling as the mystery of the Half-Blood Prince. The 6th book introduced the Enchanted Potions textbook, filled with ruthless improvements, sharp marginalia, and dark humour, signed only by the elusive alias. But in a castle full of trained wizards, in a school governed by some of the most intelligent magical minds of the age, how is it possible that no one connected the dots to Severus Snape? For decades, he had stalked the dungeons of Hogwarts with his acidic voice, distinctive phrasing, and unmistakable expertise in potions. Yet not a single professor or student even considered that the book might belong to him. The mystery begins in Slughorn's classroom, where Harry stumbles upon the tattered copy that will reshape his entire year. Within its yellowed pages, he finds brewing instructions rewritten with cold efficiency, sometimes bordering on cruelty. Instructions like crush with blade, not mortar, releases juice better, or counterclockwise exactly 7 times, reveal a mind both meticulous and daring. Even complex potions like Draught of Living Death are made deceptively simple. These aren't just notes from a talented student, they are the markings of a master, someone who has not only studied potions, but has experimented beyond the boundaries of standard curriculum. Who else at Hogwarts matched that profile? Snape wasn't a background figure. He was central, not just in position, but in presence. He had been head of Slytherin House, a former Death Eater, a man whose intelligence Dumbledore trusted more than the Ministry itself. Every student in the castle knew his voice, clipped, sardonic, authoritative. His teaching style was unmistakable. He had a way of issuing instructions that cut like a knife, and that tone is mirrored in the textbook. "Dunderheads," the prince wrote in one margin. In another, "Use your brain." Who else in the castle used such disdainful brilliance as pedagogy? And yet, the teachers did not see it. Not Minerva McGonagall, who had worked beside Snape for years and respected his abilities. Not Horace Slughorn, who had once taught Snape and even praised him as one of the most gifted students he ever had. Not Albus Dumbledore, who saw through glamours and secrets as if they were thin glass. How did none of them recognize the man behind the pen? Did they all choose not to see? Or was Snape's ability to compartmentalize so profound that even his colleagues never truly knew him? Snape had always played the role of the watcher, the outsider, even among his peers. He was never beloved, rarely praised, and always on the edge of the social dynamic at Hogwarts. Perhaps that was deliberate. Perhaps he sculpted his life that way, ensuring that no one could peer too closely into his motives. He carried layers, the bitter teacher, the haunted man, the secret protector, and buried them beneath one another like potions within potions. The Half-Blood Prince was not a name designed to be recognized. It was a mask, carefully chosen and deliberately worn. Even the title he selected is a clue to his fractured identity. The mingling of two worlds, magical and muggle, pure and impure, seen and hidden. Still, there's a disquieting implication. For all his supposed desire to hide, Snape did not destroy the book. He left it in the dungeon cupboard, accessible to any curious student. Why? Why would a man who lived for secrets leave behind such a breadcrumb trail? The textbook reveals more than clever potions. It reveals a dark mind. In its pages are spells of questionable morality, like Sectum Sempra, casually labelled as "for enemies." Who writes that into a schoolbook? And who allows such a book to remain within a student's reach? Snape wasn't careless. He was exacting, almost obsessive in his control over information. He could guard thoughts against the world's most skilled legilimens. He created entire personas within the espionage chessboard between Voldemort and Dumbledore. It's impossible to believe he simply forgot about the book or underestimated its power. More likely, he chose to leave it. Perhaps he wanted it to be found, not by just anyone, but by someone specific. Someone like Harry. Was it a trap, a gift, a test, or something more personal? There is a quiet intimacy in handwriting. The way the prince annotated the margins, how he corrected printed text as though offended by its inadequacy, tells us something about the man behind the ink. His notes are clinical but emotional, precise yet angry. Too sloppy, one reads. Do it properly. It's the voice of a teacher and a perfectionist, but it is also a lonely voice, someone correcting the world one potion at a time. That tone, clipped, bitter, impatient, was not foreign to Hogwarts. It lived in Snape's every lesson. Why didn't anyone remember the handwriting? Surely the other professors had seen his scrawl on assignments, paperwork, or letters. Surely Slughorn, who had taught Snape in his youth, would have glimpsed echoes of the boy's hand, but no one ever says a word. Even when Harry mentions the half-blood prince, there is no flicker of recognition. It's as if a veil was cast over their minds, or they had all silently agreed never to look too closely. That silence is its own kind of magic, the human magic of denial. It's tempting to say that Dumbledore knew all along, that he recognized the work immediately and chose not to speak. There is precedent for this. Dumbledore kept many secrets, but that theory introduces a deeper question. Why let Harry use the book? Why let a teenager wield spells that had not been approved or tested in a year already thick with danger? Dumbledore was not reckless. If he knew, he must have wanted the truth to unfold in a particular way. And that opens the door to manipulation, a willingness to let Harry walk into danger to learn a lesson even if it cut him. Snape's identity as the half-blood prince was never meant to be revealed at the time of its writing. It was a personal code, not a riddle. A way for a half-Muggle boy with a genius mind and no friends to claim space in a world that judged him. It was his defiance, his declaration that brilliance mattered more than blood. "I am the half-blood prince," he finally tells Harry during their confrontation, not with pride, but with a strange sadness. It is not a triumph, but a confession. The nickname itself is layered with significance. His mother, Eileen Prince, was a pure-blood witch. His father, Tobias Snape, a cruel Muggle. By calling himself the half-blood prince, Severus reclaims the parts of himself that hurt the most, his lineage, his rage, his exile from both worlds. It is a name forged from trauma, not ego. And in that, perhaps, lies the reason no one recognized him. The prince was not the man they thought they knew. He was a younger version, angrier, hungrier, and far more dangerous. Even Harry, who had been obsessed with the book for an entire year, did not see the clues. He trusted the prince's knowledge without questioning the cost. He used Sectum Sempra on Draco Malfoy with blind faith, believing that if the prince wrote it, it must be useful. It was only after seeing the horrifying result, blood gushing from invisible wounds, that Harry understood the depth of the danger. The spell wasn't just powerful, it was personal, something that came from darkness, from pain, from a part of Snape that had never healed. So why leave the book? Maybe Snape wanted to be remembered, not as the cold teacher or the double agent, but as the prince, the boy who had once dreamed of greatness before the world broke him. Maybe in some buried part of his soul, he wanted someone to recognize the genius he had hidden. Not to praise it, just to see it. Maybe he wanted to be known, truly known, by the one person who hated him the most. Or maybe it was an act of penance. By leaving the book, Snape created a mirror. Whoever found it would see a fragment of his soul, the cleverness, the cruelty, the loneliness. Perhaps he believed that if someone understood the book, they might understand him. It's not a safe way to seek redemption, but it is a very human one. To leave behind a record, not of what he did, but of who he was before the war, before the pain, before the mask. The truth is, Hogwarts was full of noise, battles, secrets, ghosts. In such a place, perhaps a single voice in a textbook was easy to miss, but the prince's voice was there all along. It whispered from the margins, from the spells, from the clever corrections and dangerous inventions. And those whispers belonged to a man who had lived his entire life unseen, despite being in plain sight. In the end, the mystery of the half-blood prince isn't a question of logic. It's a question of perception. People saw what they wanted to see: a bitter teacher, a loyal servant, a traitor, a hero. No one saw the boy who had scribbled spells into a library book because he had nowhere else to put his brilliance. No one saw the prince because the prince was never meant to be seen, and that, more than any spell, Elixir was Snape's most powerful magic. Number 21, why don't wands detect evil intentions? Of all the mysteries buried in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, few are as unsettling and as curiously unexplored as the cold neutrality of wands. These magical instruments, which can detect compatibility with their owners, choose masters on instinct, and even remember previous loyalties, show no hesitation when it comes to the morality of their use. A wand can unleash the Cruciatus curse as effortlessly as it casts a lumos, and yet it offers no resistance, no judgment, no consequence. This silence is loudest in a world where magic so often responds to intent. Why then do wands fail to sense evil? Wands are not passive sticks of wood. They possess memory, affinity, even limited agency. When Harry's wand repelled Voldemort's in the Goblet of Fire, J.K. Rowling described a beam of golden light, locking the two wands in a connection deeper than spellwork, a moment of recognition between cores that shared a twin origin. Your wand and Voldemort's share cores. Each contains a feather from the same phoenix, Dumbledore later explained. This wasn't just an incidental fact, it was a magical bond that went beyond craft or chance. Wands, it seemed, could remember. They could resist. But the same wand that remembers its twin doesn't flinch at murder. Take Peter Pettigrew, a coward, traitor, and murderer. His wand enabled the revival of Voldemort and helped destroy countless lives. Never once did it hesitate, never once did it resist. It didn't matter that he used it to kill Cedric Diggory or that he betrayed James and Lily Potter. The wand functioned just as it should, as if what it was being asked to do had no moral weight at all. This becomes even more haunting when we consider the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in history. According to legend, it could only be mastered by killing its previous owner. The wand passed from Antioch Peverell to Grindelwald to Dumbledore and, finally, to Harry. In each case, its loyalty shifted, not based on virtue or intent, but power and control. When Grindelwald slaughtered innocents across Europe, the wand obeyed. When Dumbledore used it in defense and in secret plots to destroy Voldemort, it obeyed. When Voldemort stole it and used it to kill Snape, it obeyed. The Elder Wand, the Death Stick, may have had a will, but not a conscience. One might argue that the wand is merely a tool, like a sword or a gun. That responsibility lies solely with the user. But this logic collapses when you consider that wands do show preference. Ollivander explains in The Philosopher's Stone, the wand chooses the wizard, not the other way around. This act of choice suggests that a wand can perceive something essential in a person: character, potential, resonance. So why can't it also perceive evil? Why doesn't a wand flinch when used to torture? Bellatrix. Lestrange's wand was as elegant and refined as it was deadly. Her loyalty to Voldemort was absolute, and her madness gleamed in every Cruciatus curse she flung. And yet, her wand never once resisted her. It enhanced her cruelty, strengthened her madness. It was an extension of her, and it never questioned its purpose. Magic should be sensitive to the soul. but the wand in its silence seemed to prove otherwise. Even more chilling is the scene in The Half-Blood Prince, where Draco Malfoy is assigned to kill Dumbledore. His wand trembles in his hand, but not from resistance. It's Draco who shakes. The wand is ready. The unforgivable curses, Avada Kedavra, Crucio, and Imperius, all depend on intent. You have to mean it, as Bellatrix says in The Order of the Phoenix. The magic knows, but the wand doesn't care. It becomes the conduit for whatever lies in the heart. Whether that heart is broken, vengeful, or monstrous makes no difference. The entire unforgivable curse system hinges on this terrible paradox. Magic knows what you feel. It won't cast Crucio unless you want someone to suffer. It won't let you control someone's mind unless you truly wish to dominate them. But the wand, the supposed heart of a wizard's power, makes no distinction between justice and savagery. It will carry out both with equal precision. It reacts to will, not to right. This indifference is never more apparent than during the Battle of Hogwarts. The castle echoed with spells, many of them lethal. Teenagers, professors, Death Eaters, house elves, all wielding wands, some to defend, some to kill. No wand rebelled, no wand snapped itself in horror or refused to act. Neville Longbottom's wand did not pause before cutting down Fenrir Greyback, nor did Greyback's wand hesitate before sinking teeth into the innocent. What kind of magic flows through such tools? Sirius Black was falsely imprisoned for 12 years. His wand was snapped when he was taken to Azkaban. Not because it had turned evil, but because the Ministry feared what it could do in the wrong hands. Yet they never questioned whether the wand itself had a mind of its own. It was simply broken, discarded, neutralized, like an object, not an ally. And perhaps that's all wands really are, vessels of power, blind and obedient. But this raises a darker possibility. What if wands were designed to be blind? What if the early wand makers, like Grigorovich, Ollivander's ancestors, or even the mythical Antioch Peveril, intentionally made sure their creations could not judge their wielders? What if moral neutrality was baked into the craft not by accident, but by fear? A wand that could say no might one day say it to its master. In a world obsessed with control, such a wand would be dangerous. Imagine a wand that refused to perform Avada Kedavra. One that sensed innocence and refused to harm a child. One that screamed in protest at being used for torture. Such a wand would terrify the Dark Lords. They would hunt down its maker, kill its users, burn its blueprints. The very idea threatens the core structure of magical power. Perhaps that is why no such wand exists, or why it was destroyed and its story erased. Even in Fantastic Beasts, where we see early 20th century wandcraft, there's no hint of a different system. The wizards of Macusa, Auros in particular, use their wands for everything, from stunning to memory erasure to execution. No distinction, no ethical interference. The wand merely follows command. The authority of its wielder is all that matters. Intent is magical, but the tool remains morally inert. Consider Snape's wand, used to heal, to kill, to protect, and to deceive. He casts Sectum Sempra and non-verbal shields with the same fluidity. His wand does not care that he shifts between roles, from Death Eater to Double Agent to Protector of Lily Potter's son. The wand follows him into darkness and out again, silent and unquestioning. His personal torment echoes in his spells, but never once in the object he holds. Hermione Granger, for all her brilliance and rule-following, uses dark spells when needed. She modifies her parents' memories in the Deathly Hallows, essentially erasing herself from their lives, a profound and painful act. But her wand doesn't warn her, doesn't hesitate, doesn't whisper that this is a line crossed. It executes the charm with perfect efficiency. Love drove her, but magic didn't care, nor did her wand. Harry's wand, the holly and phoenix feather, is often seen as a symbol of good, but even it performs the Cruciatus curse in the Deathly Hallows. "You have to mean it, Harry," Bellatrix had once said. And he does. When he casts it on Amicus Carrow for spitting at McGonagall, it works. His wand doesn't blink, not even for a moment. Its former bond with Voldemort doesn't shatter. Its loyalty doesn't falter. It is loyal to Harry, but not to his ideals. Voldemort himself, the most twisted soul in the series, uses wands with surgical cruelty. He murders with ease, he tortures for pleasure. He uses magic to fly, to manipulate, to dominate. And not once does a wand betray him. They serve him until they are taken, snapped, or overpowered. Even the Elder Wand only rebels because Harry owns it, not because it finally grew a conscience. Its betrayal is about power, not ethics. So where does this leave us? If magic can feel, if it can know intention, if it can punish with backfired spells, why are its primary tools so dead inside? Why do they never resist the evil they channel? Perhaps because the greatest secret of the wizarding world is this: magic is not good, magic is not evil, magic is power. And power, unless tempered, is always immoral. The silence of the wand may reflect a deeper truth about the magical world, that despite all the spells and potions and enchantments, it is still a human world. Humans choose, humans corrupt, and the tools they build, no matter how alive, are shaped in that image. A wand that judges would make wizards accountable. And perhaps that is something the world of Harry Potter was never ready for. Number 22. Why didn't Hermione restore her parents' memory on screen? Of all the sacrifices made in the Wizarding War, one remains uniquely intimate, almost sacred in its heartbreak: Hermione Granger erasing herself from her parents' lives. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, she tells Harry and Ron, "I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia, which they have now done." It's one of the most chilling moments in the series, not because it involves blood or death, but because it demonstrates a complete self-erasure. Hermione, always defined by her intellect and fierce loyalty, deletes herself from the minds of the two people who raised her. And yet after this line, after this grand, irreversible act, the narrative walks away. Hermione's parents, who were once seen in the Philosopher's Stone, are banished from the story like ghosts in a fog. There is something unsettling about how cleanly this thread is dropped. The books are meticulous in wrapping up fates. Harry buries Dobby, visits his parents' graves, and even finds peace with Dudley. Neville becomes a professor at Hogwarts. Draco, of all people, gets a second chance. But Hermione's parents, the Muggle dentists who raised the brightest witch of her age, disappear. No mention is made of her going to Australia. No page is spent on their reunion. No paragraph grants them their memory or their daughter back. This silence is not just an oversight, it creates a dissonance with Hermione's character. Because if anyone in this world would go back to restore what she broke, it is Hermione Granger. The magic Hermione used is complex. Memory modification in the wizarding world is notoriously unstable. Gilderoy Lockhart, for instance, loses all memory after a backfired obliviate in the Chamber of Secrets. Bertha Jorkins, who was subjected to memory charms, suffers long-term cognitive damage. Slughorn's altered memory in The Half-Blood Prince is clouded and unreliable. All these examples point to one thing: memory magic, though powerful, is dangerous. And Hermione didn't just modify her parents' memories, she rewrote their entire identities, planted new ambitions, and sent them across the globe. The spell she cast wasn't casual, it was irreversible, or at least not designed to be reversed easily. This raises the question, was Hermione capable of undoing it? The text never answers. We are left to imagine that after the war, she tracked them down and restored everything. But how? Would they recognize her? Would they believe her? Could their original memories be fully retrieved, or were they lost in the haze of foreign thoughts and magical tampering? The books never say. Hermione herself never says. Even in The Cursed Child, which revisits many characters and events, her parents are absent. This is not a small hole in the fabric of the story. It is a gaping wound. The lack of closure on this front feels strange, especially when we consider how much the books dwell on the cost of war. We see George mourning Fred. We hear about Remus and Tonks leaving behind a baby. We are given Teddy Lupin's name. We attend funerals, grieve in silence, carry legacies. But the story of two Muggles who lost their daughter to the shadows of war is left entirely untold. We never see Hermione wrestle with the emotional aftermath, never see her board a plane to Sydney, never watch her explain the truth to Monica and Wendell, never feel the relief or the terror of what their reunion would mean. That absence is not poetic, it is jarring. One might argue that the books are, after all, Harry's story. But this explanation feels hollow when so much page time is devoted to other characters' development. Rowling is not shy about exploring parallel journeys. Ron's struggle with inferiority, Neville's transformation, even Draco's moral ambiguity. Hermione, too, is richly developed, yet this defining act, this monumental choice, is treated as a footnote. She protects her parents in silence, and that silence never ends. What's more disturbing is what the silence implies. Did something go wrong? Did Hermione ever find them? Or was the magic irreversible? Was this an unspoken loss she simply carried? Hermione, who cried over house elves and risked her life to break into Gringotts for the greater good, would not let her parents vanish. And yet in the canon, she seems to do exactly that. There's a haunting possibility. What if the memory charm could not be undone? What if their minds were too deeply rewritten? In the same way that Gilderoy Lockhart remained trapped in St. Mungo's, unable to reclaim his identity, what if Hermione's parents could not be made whole again? Would she have tried and failed? Would she have hidden that failure even from Harry and Ron? The books offer no answer, but the implications are chilling. If Hermione sacrificed her parents forever, then her victory in the war carries a terrible price, one paid in silence, one that no spell can mend. It's also worth noting the emotional burden this would place on her. Throughout the series, Hermione is portrayed as the emotional compass of the trio. She grounds Harry, mediates Ron, holds the line when both boys falter. Her logic and heart are in constant balance, but a person who loses their family by their own hand does not emerge unscarred. There is a weight to that kind of choice, a lifelong ache, and if she carried that pain in silence, it rewrites much of how we see her. Her strength becomes more tragic, her loyalty more costly. The books give us a moment where she watches the ruins of her childhood home, 12 Grimmauld Place, and feels its coldness. But we never see her reckon with the absence of her real home. Hermione was always an outsider in the wizarding world, Muggle-born, mocked by Draco, underestimated by Snape. Her roots grounded her. Erasing them should have been a crisis, a trauma, a wound we witness. Instead, it becomes a line of dialogue and nothing more. Even from a narrative perspective, this thread deserved more. It could have been a powerful epilogue scene. Picture Hermione knocking on a suburban door in Perth. An elderly couple answers. She stands silent. A beat passes. Then she whispers, "Mum? Dad?" Imagine the power of that scene, the tension, the heartbreak, the hope. It could have shown us that healing was possible, not just for Hogwarts, but for everyone touched by this war. Instead, we get a wedding, a kiss, and 19 years later, a quiet platform. This omission also highlights a broader pattern in the series, the tendency to resolve large-scale tragedies with small, sentimental gestures. The deaths of Fred, Tonks and Lupin are followed by no funerals. The rebuilding of the Ministry in Hogwarts is never described. The trauma of living through magical genocide is barely touched. In such a context, the story of Hermione's parents isn't uniquely overlooked. It's part of a trend, but it stings more because Hermione deserves better. She deserved to complete her circle, to reclaim what she lost, to be seen in her pain and not just her brilliance. Rowling herself has addressed this only vaguely. In interviews, she has stated that Hermione did go back and reverse the spell, but canon is not defined by interviews, it is defined by the text. And in the text, there is silence. In the text, there is no hug, no tears, no memory restored. The story demands imagination to fill in this void. But should it? When a character sacrifices her family for the greater good, the story owes her more than speculation. And yet maybe that's the point. Maybe this silence is the scar. Just as Harry's forehead carries the mark of his past, maybe Hermione's wound is quieter, a memory erased, a home abandoned, a truth she cannot voice. It's easy to fight evil when the enemy wears a mask. It's harder when the cost is invisible. Hermione doesn't just defeat dark wizards, she buries parts of herself to win. Still, even in that reading, the absence feels cruel, because we love Hermione. We watched her grow from a bushy-haired rule follower into a warrior. She was never just a sidekick, she was the soul of the trio. And when she cried, we cried. When she stood for justice, we cheered. When she loved, we felt it. To leave her story incomplete, to let her parents vanish without closure, feels like a betrayal. Not just of her character, but of everything she represents. The Ministry, after the war, might have had resources to help. Kingsley Shacklebolt, as interim Minister for Magic, was said to be a fair and forward-thinking leader. It's likely that memory restoration experts could have assisted Hermione, but we never see that. We never hear her ask. We never see her grieve. Even her wedding to Ron is devoid of these questions. Were her parents there? Were they able to witness their daughter's triumph? The books say nothing. This silence has created a strange ripple in fan circles. Theories abound that the memory spell was fatal to their minds, that they refused to remember, that they were happier without the truth. None of these ideas are supported by canon, but their mere existence speaks to the hole left in the story. When readers must invent closure, it means the story didn't provide it. Even the idea of Hermione, now a mother herself, raising her children without her parents, without the guidance, love, and connection of the two people who made her who she is, feels too bleak to accept. And yet, the books don't refute it. We don't know if Hugo and Rose met their grandparents. We don't know if Wendell and Monica ever became Emma and Daniel Granger again, the best minds in the magical world restored. A cursed school and rebuilt shattered institutions, but one of their best witches might never have gotten her family back. In the end, this isn't just about a forgotten plot thread. It's about legacy, consequence, and the quiet casualties of war. The story of Hermione's parents is a mirror held up to the larger story, one that shows us that even the brightest light casts a shadow, and in that shadow we find the cost of heroism, not always with screams or scars, sometimes with silence. Number 23. Why don't wizards fly more often? In the heart of the magical world, where barriers between the possible and the impossible dissolve with a flick of the wand, one would expect the skies to be filled with witches and wizards soaring freely on broomsticks. After all, flight is one of the most primal dreams of humanity, and unlike Muggles, magical folk have had the means to achieve it for centuries. And yet, outside the feverish cheers of a Quidditch match or a few scattered scenes of hurried pursuit, the skies of the wizarding world remain curiously empty. Adults, for the most part, do not fly. Streets bustle with magical activity, fireplaces glow green with flue powder, but the sky, so open, so infinite, remains largely untouched. Why? It is a strange omission in a universe where brooms are so readily available. Even in the earliest depictions of the wizarding world, from the moment Harry steps onto the grounds of Hogwarts, flight is associated with joy, with exhilaration. His first broomstick lesson with Madame Hooch becomes a moment of revelation. Harry knew somehow what to do, the text says. He had never felt so alive. The broom lifts him with perfect understanding, as if it were an extension of his own will. And yet this intoxicating sense of freedom rarely translates into adult life. The same joy that sparked Harry's Quidditch career is later buried beneath disapparitions and portkeys. Something changed. It is not that adult wizards are incapable of flight. We know they are. Sirius Black, even in his fugitive state, took Buckbeak high into the skies. Mundungus Fletcher, a rather clumsy wizard by all accounts, managed a broom. During the Battle of the Seven Potters, we see a number of adult witches and wizards take to the air, but these moments are all marked by urgency, by necessity. Flight, it seems, is an exception, not the norm. We do not see magical businessmen commuting by broom, no magical traffic lanes in the skies. Even delivery services like Owlpost rely on birds rather than broom-mounted couriers. Why would such a useful tool be relegated to sport and emergencies? The argument that apparition is simply more convenient does not fully hold. Apparition is risky. It requires a license, and even seasoned wizards can leave body parts behind. Remember the unfortunate splinching incident of Ron Weasley in the Deathly Hallows. Ron's left arm was bleeding profusely. Hermione, white-faced, was trying to staunch the flow with her scarf. Apparition is stressful, dangerous, and not suitable for long distances or unplanned travel. A broom, on the other hand, offers control and visibility. It allows the rider to adjust course, to see the world unfold below, to travel with companions or packages. And unlike apparition, it leaves no trace, no magical signature. It is stealthy and yet rarely used. Might expect to see broom-based transportation companies, flying taxis, magical postal services. The Muggle world has its drones, its helicopters. In contrast, the magical world, with all its advancements, seems stuck in traditions. We are told the Ministry of Magic employs enchanted paper aeroplanes to send messages between departments, yet no mention is made of aerial infrastructure for personal use. No broom garages, no aerial patrols outside wartime. Even the Auras, elite defenders of the magical realm, seem to favour disapparition and stealth over the strategic advantage of flight. There is the possibility that the Ministry of Magic discourages such travel. After all, the International Statute of Secrecy must be maintained. A fleet of wizards streaking through the skies would be difficult to hide from Muggles, even with memory charms. In the Order of the Phoenix, the advance guard transporting Harry flies carefully and at night. "We don't want to be seen," says Lupin. "Think of the Statute of Secrecy." So flight, despite its practicality, becomes a burden to hide. Wizards, it seems, fear the gaze from below more than the fall from above. This fear hints at a deeper truth. That wizarding society, for all its power, is obsessed with secrecy. They have built an entire culture on concealment. Their cities are hidden, their schools cloaked, their shops unseen by non-magical eyes. The sky, wide and open, threatens that secrecy. Unlike the ground, it cannot be easily shielded. Spells like Muffliato or Fidelius do not function the same way in the air. A Muggle with a telescope could spot something they shouldn't. And in a world that prioritizes invisibility over progress, flight becomes not a freedom, but a liability. There are, of course, technical arguments as well. Not all brooms are created equal. We are told of the Clean Sweep 5, the Nimbus 2000, the Firebolt, each superior to the last. But these are elite models, expensive, designed for speed and maneuverability. What of the common broom? In The Prisoner of Azkaban, when the school receives a batch of old clean sweeps for team practice, Ron scoffs. They're ancient," he says. "They'll hardly get off the ground." Maintenance, it seems, is an issue, and if one cannot afford the best, perhaps one avoids flight altogether. Another disturbing possibility arises in the emotional undertone of flying scenes. While Harry revels in flight, others express discomfort. Hermione Granger, capable of mastering almost any spell, loathes flying. "Flying's not exactly my favourite thing," she mutters. "It's more than fear, it's unease." The brooms are not machines. They are semi-sentient, temperamental. Remember Harry's first experience on the firebolt? It seemed to be alive beneath him, responding to the slightest movement of his hands and knees. Such responsiveness might unsettle a mind used to control. It is no wonder that a society so tightly ordered, so rule-bound, might shy away from something so wild. Moreover, there is the question of magical strain. It is never stated outright, but the impression lingers. Prolonged broom flight is exhausting. Even the best Quidditch players are worn thin after a match. In Goblet of Fire, when Victor Crumb returns after his game, he is pale and sweaty. He looked even grimmer than usual. If top athletes are drained by aerial movement, what hope for the average witch or wizard? Perhaps broom travel, like Apparition, exacts a toll on the body or the magical core. It might simply be unsustainable for daily use. And then, curiously, we must consider social image. In the wizarding world, class and tradition run deep, robes instead of trousers, quills instead of pens. The same logic may apply to brooms. For all their elegance, they carry an air of adolescence. The sight of an adult on a broom might be seen as juvenile, undignified. In Half-Blood Prince, when Harry spots Tonks flying awkwardly, it is played almost comically. She was zigzagging rather than flying straight. Adults are not expected to be graceful in the air. Dignity lies on the ground. Contrast this with the pomp of magical carriages and flying vehicles. The Weasleys' Ford Anglia, enchanted by Arthur Weasley, becomes a legend. Beauxbaton arrives in a flying carriage pulled by winged horses, a scene of regal grandeur. Even Sirius and Buckbeak have a Gothic flair. Brooms, in contrast, are stripped-down tools. No shelter, no glamour, just wind and wood. In a culture that values lineage and prestige, flight in its rawest form might be considered too crude. It is strange that we never see magical emergency services in the air. No air ambulances, no broom-riding medics swooping in during a crisis. When Katie Bell is cursed by the necklace in Half-Blood Prince, she is transported back to school by foot. A flying medic could have saved her agony. Even during the Battle of Hogwarts, there are no flying rescue teams. Everything happens on the ground, in the stone halls and courtyards. Where is the aerial division of the Order of the Phoenix? The sky remains empty, untouched. And yet, in moments of desperation, the sky is always there. In the Deathly Hallows, as Harry escapes Privet Drive, flight becomes a lifeline. The air becomes a battleground. They were surrounded, the book says. Jets of light were flying in every direction. It is a scene of chaos and beauty, one of the rare moments where the wizarding world truly claims the sky. And still, it is temporary. When the battle ends, so does the flight, back to the ground, back to hiding. It is telling that the most famous airborne wizard is Gilderoy Lockhart, and he is a fraud. In Chamber of Secrets, he poses on broomsticks in his portraits, grinning as he zooms through the air. But it is all for show. Perhaps this is a metaphor for broom flight in the adult world. It is performative, a relic of youth. To truly use a broom to embrace the air is to reject the comforts of the magical system, and that system does not reward risk-takers. Perhaps deep down, the magical world fears what it might see from the sky. From above, boundaries blur, hidden houses, secret passageways, wards and illusions, they may all be visible. The very structure of wizarding secrecy might collapse under aerial scrutiny. And so the air becomes taboo, not by law, but by silent consensus. They fear not just being seen, but seeing themselves from a new perspective. A broom offers freedom. And freedom, for those who have built their lives on ancient codes, is the greatest danger of all. In that context, Harry's love for flight becomes more than a hobby. It is rebellion. He is a boy who sees the world from above, who learns to trust the sky. He flies when others walk. He questions what others accept, and in doing so he becomes a symbol, not of sport, but of resistance. of the possibility that the wizarding world could be different, could rise above its fears and truly soar. But for now they remain grounded by choice, by fear, and by silence. Number 24. Why isn't the Mirror of Erised used in battle? The Mirror of Erised stands silently in the forgotten corners of Hogwarts, buried deep in an unused classroom, shrouded in dust and silence. It is an object of incredible power, yet cloaked in mystery. Described by Albus Dumbledore as showing not your face, but your heart's desire, it once captivated young Harry Potter, who returned night after night to sit before it, mesmerized by the sight of his lost parents. The mirror's magic was more than visual illusion. It pierced into the soul, bypassing reason and anchoring itself in the rawest recesses of longing. Harry could not look away. He could not think of anything else. In a war where illusions and fear are tools of manipulation, how could such a potent device be forgotten when the stakes were at their highest? Albus Dumbledore was the first to acknowledge the mirror's danger. Men have wasted away before it, he warned Harry. He confessed that he himself saw his heart's deepest desire in it, something he would not reveal even to his most trusted allies. It was this very danger that compelled him to hide the mirror away. But danger and power often go hand in hand in the wizarding world. And in a universe where the likes of the Sorcerer's Stone are used to bait traps and time-turners are deployed by schoolchildren, why was the Mirror of Erised, capable of bypassing the mind and touching the soul, never wielded in battle? The Department of Mysteries, whose very job is to probe the obscure and the inexplicable, never made mention of the Mirror of Erised. This absence is peculiar. They study love, death, time and thought, abstract forces embodied in tangible magical phenomena. The mirror, which elicits desire so vividly it can reduce a strong wizard to helplessness, belongs in their hall more than any other artifact. Yet we are never told of any investigation into its nature, its origins, or its limitations. Could it be that the Ministry feared what it might find? Or worse, did it already know and chose to forget? The Battle of the Department of Mysteries was a turning point in the Second Wizarding War. Had the mirror been placed in the Hall of Prophecies, it could have functioned as a trap. Imagine Bellatrix Lestrange stumbling upon it, expecting another weapon or prophecy, only to see a vision of herself restored to her glory beside a triumphant, dark lord. Would she have lingered? Would she have become entranced? If a 15-year-old boy could lose track of time for hours, could not a Death Eater be paralyzed in critical moments? The mirror's allure was not only psychological, it disrupted thought, broke down intention. It offered not merely a reflection, but an obsession. We saw its strength most clearly in Harry's first year, when even under mortal danger from Quirrell and Voldemort, the mirror became a vessel of protection. It hid the Sorcerer's Stone through complex enchantment that Dumbledore later described as granting the stone only to those who wanted it, but not to use it. The mirror did not merely reflect, or it judged, it filtered intention. This proves it is capable of more than passive vision. It can be warded, enchanted, interwoven with complex magical logic. Then why was it never weaponized? When Dumbledore revealed to Harry that he had moved the mirror to a more remote location, we were left with a haunting sentence. I ask you not to go looking for it again. That plea was not for Harry's safety alone. It was an acknowledgement that the mirror's pull was universal. Dumbledore, perhaps the most brilliant wizard of his age, was himself afraid of it, not of its power over others, but of its power over him. If such a mind feared what it saw in its own soul, then it stands to reason that the mirror reveals a vulnerability too dangerous to allow into common use. But if the mirror reveals weakness through desire, could it not be used to exploit the enemy's flaws? Tom Riddle, obsessed with immortality and greatness, would have seen himself invincible, untouched by time, feared by the world. Such an image shown at the right time, could have fractured his attention, drawn out his deepest fears, the fragility behind the grandeur. What if, upon confronting the mirror, he realized he still feared death? What if his image changed over time, revealing his fractured soul, or worse, nothing at all? The mirror does not lie. It might have revealed to Voldemort that he had no desire left, no soul to reflect. Would that not have destabilized him? Dumbledore once said, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." But in war, distraction can be weaponized. Dementors feed on happiness. The boggart preys on fear. The mirror of Erised does something more dangerous. It overwhelms reason with longing. No spell of distraction or disorientation could rival its quiet power. If used in battle, hidden in a hallway, waiting in a chamber, presented as a gift, it could immobilize a foe long enough to disarm them, or worse. Why was this never done? In the room of requirement, the DA conjured simulacra of enemies, targets for spells. But what if they had practiced against their own desires? Could the mirror have trained them to resist emotional manipulation? Occlumency trains the mind to protect against intrusion, but the mirror does not intrude, it invites, it seduces. To master oneself before it would be to master one's soul. Could the mirror have served as the ultimate test of resolve for those fighting in the Order? Perhaps it was fear that kept it hidden. Dumbledore, more than any other, understood the cost of obsession. He had seen it in his sister Ariana in Grindelwald and within himself. His desire, possibly the resurrection of his family, or the undoing of his greatest mistakes, was too dangerous to indulge, and so the mirror was buried. Not protected, buried. Like a secret no one could afford to know. The less it was spoken of, the less power it had. That was the belief. But power ignored is not power eliminated. There is also the possibility that the mirror's magic is evolving. Like the room of requirement which adapts to need, the mirror of Erised may have layers yet unexplored. It was created, by whom, we do not know, and placed in Hogwarts for a reason. What if it does more than reflect? What if, when the conditions are right, the mirror gives? Harry received the Sorcerer's Stone through it, a physical object conjured from desire. This crosses the line between illusion and manifestation. What would happen if someone looked into the mirror and saw themselves holding a wand that could destroy death itself? Would the mirror give it to them? It is not hard to believe that the mirror's effects could stretch into the physical realm. If wishes have power in the wizarding world, and they often do, then concentrated desire could be a fuel for magic. The mirror could act as a conduit, but the cost might be immense. Dumbledore, in hiding it, may have feared not only its abuse, but the price of its use. Magic in the Harry Potter universe always has a balance. The unforgivable curses require intent. Horcruxes demand murder. Love magic leaves echoes the mirror might grant only through sacrifice. Let us return to Harry. A boy of 11, orphaned and neglected, sits before a mirror and sees a family that never was. The magic is so potent that it becomes real to him, not visually, not physically, but emotionally. He talks to them. He reaches for them. He does not eat, does not sleep. And this is without any incantation, no spell, just presence. Would an adult with a deeper, more dangerous desire not fall even further? Could the mirror become addictive? Addiction to magic is not unheard of. Wizards grow dependent on Felix Felicis, on glamour charms, on cursed objects. But this mirror requires no ingredients, no preparation, only your presence, only your heart. And in that it may be the most dangerous magical artifact of all. Its danger lies not in chaos but in stillness, in seduction without words, in comfort that kills the will. This brings us to another unsettling thought. What if Voldemort himself knew of the mirror? What if he feared it? A being who cut his soul into pieces might well be terrified of seeing what he had become. Perhaps he knew he had no reflection left to show. When Harry faced the mirror, he saw his family. When Voldemort looked into it, perhaps he saw only darkness, an empty reflection, that kind of terror. Cannot be wielded without consequences. Maybe Dumbledore understood this. Maybe he realized that using the mirror would mean unleashing something no one could control. Or perhaps Dumbledore did use it, once, and vowed never again. We do not know what he saw. His expression when he spoke of the mirror was not merely cautionary, it was haunted. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. But desperation is a dangerous thing. In the wrong hands, even a dream can become a weapon. The Mirror of Erised remains one of the greatest enigmas in the wizarding world. It is not a tool of war, not a trick, not a spell. It is a truth laid bare, and that truth may be more powerful than any curse. But truth, as Dumbledore knew, is not always safe. It cannot be aimed, it cannot be cast, it cannot be controlled. And so it was hidden, not to protect Harry, but to protect everyone else, from themselves. Number 25. Why can some wizards do wandless magic? Of all the many secrets buried beneath the surface of the Harry Potter universe, there is one question that refuses to go away, no matter how much we try to ignore it. Why do some witches and wizards perform magic without a wand, when others seem utterly powerless without one? In the very first book, before Harry even knows he's a wizard, he makes the glass of a snake exhibit vanish in the blink of an eye. He has no wand, no training, no knowledge. It simply happens. He leapt back with a yell as the glass front of the boa constrictor's tank had vanished. The moment is portrayed as accidental, even emotional, but its implications are colossal. If an untrained child can channel magic purely from instinct, then what truly is the role of the wand? Throughout the series, wands are described as the conduits of magical power, not the source. Ollivander's most famous line echoes in the minds of fans. The wand chooses the wizard. And yet, the entire Hogwarts curriculum is built around the assumption that a wand is essential. Every subject, every class, begins with the fundamental necessity of wand work. Transfiguration requires it. Charms are nothing without it. Even defense against the dark arts is taught almost exclusively through wand-based methods. The educational structure of Hogwarts implies that magic is practically unusable without a wand, and yet the books and films offer a series of contradictory exceptions that quietly unravel this assumption. One of the most striking examples comes from Albus Dumbledore. In Order of the Phoenix, during the dramatic confrontation in the Ministry of Magic, Dumbledore vanishes from the office in a blaze of fire, apparently without uttering a word and without raising a wand. "You may not have realized it, but you have just performed some very advanced magic," he says to Harry shortly afterward. But what about Dumbledore himself? He doesn't just disapparate. He does it with a grandeur and silence that implies mastery beyond conventional wizardry. It's not just a matter of experience. Other adult wizards, even skilled ones, still rely on spoken spells and gestures, but Dumbledore transcends that. Then there is Lord Voldemort. In the Goblet of Fire, during his resurrection scene in the graveyard, Voldemort manipulates magical forces with mere gestures, pointing and flicking his long, pale fingers in ways that resemble spellcasting without ever using his wand. The way he lifts Harry into the air, tortures him with sheer will, and even silences him in the final duel. All of it hints at a magic that flows not from the wand, but from within. "You see," Voldemort says, "I have been careless, and so have others." He says this in reference to overlooking Harry's protection, but the phrase applies just as much to the audience. We have all been careless in accepting the wand as the one true source. Even Severus Snape, the master of precision, is caught in the mystery. When he duels McGonagall in the final film adaptation, he blocks multiple spells at once and blasts through the window behind him without saying a word. This moment has no parallel in the books, but the scene is no less telling. Snape moves his hand in an arc as if pulling from the air itself. His wand is present, yes, but the execution of the magic appears faster, smoother, more instinctual than anything taught in a Hogwarts classroom. This is not textbook magic. It is embodied magic. And let's return to Harry. The boy who lived, the accidental hero, begins his magical journey not with incantations but with raw emotion. When Aunt Marge insults his parents in The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry doesn't think about magic. He simply reacts, and Marge inflates like a balloon. No wand, no spell, just rage. "She's blowing up," Vernon Dursley says in horror, but Harry's own words echo louder. "I didn't mean to." If the most powerful magic often comes from unintended bursts of emotion, then perhaps wandless magic is not so much untaught as feared. There are other examples too easily forgotten. When young Tom Riddle terrorizes other children in the orphanage, he controls animals and manipulates objects without even understanding how. "I can make things move without touching them," he says to Dumbledore. "I can make animals do what I want them to do without training them." The fact that Riddle demonstrates control, not chaos, at such a young age, makes his ability all the more terrifying. He does not need a wand. He needs only will. So why, then, is this power so rarely explored or developed? Why does the magical world invest so completely in wands when clearly the potential lies deeper? The answer may be hiding not in magical ability but in magical authority. A world that teaches wandless magic is a world that encourages personal mastery. It is difficult to monitor, harder to regulate. The Ministry of Magic tracks underage magic through wands. It controls the use of spells through legal classifications, but if a wizard can cast magic without any instrument at all, then the entire system collapses. Wandless magic is the antithesis of institutional control. It cannot be licensed, restricted, or even reliably predicted. This may be why Hogwarts does not teach it, not because it is impossible, but because it is dangerous. Students who learn to channel their magic without a wand might learn to bypass every rule ever written. If the wand chooses the wizard, wandless magic allows the wizard to choose themselves, and that perhaps is the greatest threat of all. There are glimpses of this fear even in the adults. When Harry produces a Patronus at age 13, he is scolded not just for the spell but for the context. The Ministry's panic is not about the act, it is about the independence. A child performing advanced magic outside of school? Unthinkable. And yet the real concern is not the Patronus itself, but that Harry did it alone. No supervision, no permission, no control. It also sheds new light on characters like Sirius Black and Bellatrix Lestrange. Both are shown to cast spells and produce magical effects in Azkaban and in the moments before or after. How exactly? Without wands, locked in a prison designed to suppress power, their magic seeps out through sheer force of personality. Bellatrix in particular is portrayed as radiating energy, her very presence unhinged and electric. She doesn't need a wand to be terrifying. And what of house elves? Creatures long considered inferior by the wizarding world, they consistently perform powerful magic without wands. Dobby disapparates inside Hogwarts, which should be impossible. Creature attacks, transports, and manipulates the physical world without ever lifting more than a finger. If the magical elite dismiss these beings, it may be because they reflect an uncomfortable truth. Power exists beyond the approved channels. Even the concept of accidental magic in children deserves re-evaluation. It's called accidental not because it's chaotic, but because it's uncontrolled. Yet control comes with understanding, and if understanding were nurtured, wandless magic might be refined, taught, even mastered. But such mastery would shift the balance of power. It would render wands obsolete, teachers unnecessary, and institutions vulnerable. The truth is, the entire wizarding society depends on the illusion that wands are necessary. They are not. They are tools, refined, powerful, and elegant, but still tools. The fact that powerful wizards can cast without them is not a glitch in the system. It is a revelation, a secret truth hidden in plain sight. And perhaps for those like Dumbledore and Voldemort, the wand becomes a convenience, not a necessity, something to amplify magic, not define it. This also explains the reverence and fear surrounding Elder Wands and other legendary instruments. These wands are not just tools, they are symbols of dominance, but only for those who still rely on them. Dumbledore, who possesses the Elder Wand, often chooses not to use it. Voldemort seeks it obsessively but fails to understand its meaning, because he still believes the wand holds the power. Dumbledore knows better. In the end, the quiet moments say more than the spectacular ones. When Harry fixes his broken wand with the Elder Wand and then breaks the Elder Wand in two, he does something extraordinary. He rejects the obsession, he chooses his own path. But even here, the question remains. What if he never needed any wand at all? What if, from the very beginning, his power was always his own? There are no definitive answers in the canon. Rowling herself has never offered a full explanation, and perhaps that is the point. The unexplained is the most magical of all. Wandless magic is not a loophole, it is a whisper of something greater, a reminder that in the heart of every witch and wizard, the true power lies not in wood or core, but in will, in choice, in belief. And that is the real secret of Harry Potter, not the boy who lived, but the boy who didn't need a wand to change the world. Number 26. Why can so few people see Thestrals? Of all the mysteries hidden within the Harry Potter universe, few are as quietly unsettling as the existence of Thestrals. These skeletal, winged horses, shrouded in shadow and misunderstood even by those who walk the halls of Hogwarts, exist according to a rule that is never fully explained. They are visible only to those who have seen death, more precisely, those who have witnessed it and come to understand it. Yet this rule, which sounds deceptively simple, crumbles under scrutiny when examined through the events of Harry's life. For a boy whose infancy was defined by his mother's murder, it seems inexplicable that he does not perceive these creatures until years later, following the death of Cedric Diggory. This contradiction suggests something far deeper at work, a thread in Rowling's magical fabric that was left intentionally frayed, or perhaps overlooked entirely. When Harry arrives at Hogwarts in the Philosopher's Stone, he travels to the castle across the Black Lake, too young for the carriages that will later be pulled by Thestrals. But by his second year and onward, he joins the rest of the students in the horseless carriages that move seemingly on their own. He never remarks upon seeing any creatures pulling them. It is not until Order of the Phoenix, after witnessing Cedric's death, that he finally sees the Thestrals. They were standing quite still, featureless, and silent, the horses Harry had seen pulling the carriages to the castle, Rowling writes. If horses, they were... This shift is rationalized in the books by the notion that only those who have both seen and processed death are able to see Thestrals. J.K. Rowling has stated outside the text that Harry did not truly understand what he saw as a baby when his mother was killed, and thus was unable to perceive the creatures. But this interpretation feels suspiciously like a post hoc justification. After all, can a child not experience trauma? Can the loss of a parent, especially one accompanied by a green flash and a cry of pain, be dismissed as emotionally inconsequential simply due to the victim's age? The rule raises a chilling implication. The line between seeing and not seeing death is not drawn by the event itself, but by its psychological digestion. A person might watch another die, yet if they do not emotionally grasp it, they cannot see a Thestral. But how is that grasp measured? Luna Lovegood, who sees Thestrals, witnessed her mother die at age 9. She was young, and yet the creatures revealed themselves to her. This undermines the idea that age or maturity determines visibility. Luna clearly felt the weight of loss, perhaps more deeply than Harry did in his infancy. But isn't that arbitrary? Isn't trauma still trauma, whether processed consciously or felt viscerally? There's also Neville Longbottom, who witnessed the slow and tragic mental death of his parents at St. Mungo's. He does not see Thestrals. Despite visiting his parents, watching their vacant stares, their inability to recognize him, the loss of their identities, to Bellatrix Lestrange's Cruciatus curse, it does not count. Apparently, death must be literal, not symbolic or emotional. But this again brings us to a paradox. Who defines what counts as witnessing death? Neville lost his parents in every way that matters, yet because their hearts continued to beat, the magic of the Thestrals denied him. The idea that Thestrals are tied not to death itself, but to the internal acceptance of death, leads us to a darker interpretation. The creatures may not be magical beasts at all in the traditional sense. Perhaps they are a manifestation of loss itself, appearing only when the soul of a wizard or witch is forced to confront the inescapable finality of life. In that sense, they are not beasts pulling carriages, but embodiments of understanding, philosophical phantoms that ride alongside grief. Thestrals, then, are not about death, but about knowing death. Hogwarts as a place is old and layered with memory. The carriages have travelled back and forth since long before Harry or Luna was born. Surely students over the centuries have died. Surely others have witnessed death. And yet, even in the crowded halls of Hogwarts, those who see Thestrals are few. "You're not mad," Luna tells Harry in Order of the Phoenix. "I can see them too. You're just as sane as I am." But the fact that so few students are in this invisible fellowship seems statistically implausible, unless there is something deeper behind the phenomenon. It's worth noting that in the Battle of Hogwarts, many students perish. One can imagine that in the weeks following the war, dozens of new Thestral seers walk among the survivors. But this is never addressed. No character later remarks on now seeing the creatures. It's as though the rule applies only when the plot demands it. If the rule is based on psychological acceptance, then it begs the question, when exactly does that moment occur? Is there a magical threshold, an invisible gate one must cross to unlock sight? The invisibility of Thestrals is never treated as a curse or a blessing. It simply is, but that in itself is unsettling. If the creatures are real and physical, why aren't their hooves heard by those who cannot see them? Why doesn't someone walk into them by accident? The assumption is that they exist in both the magical and metaphorical plane, a sort of Schrödinger's beast. This invites a fascinating theory, that Thestrals may not be creatures of flesh and bone at all, but magical projections woven from memory and grief. Their interaction with the physical world is possible only for those whose own souls have changed through suffering. Consider Hagrid's role in all this. He breeds and trains Thestrals. He interacts with them as real creatures, yet we never hear him explain to Harry why he cannot see them at first. Did Hagrid witness death? Surely he must have. He was present when his father died. But again, we do not know the moment when he began seeing the creatures. Rowling never describes Hagrid as one of the Thestral seers, yet his closeness to the creatures implies long familiarity. The inconsistency deepens. In Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, we see Thestrals pulling carriages in Paris, visible to Newt Scamander and others. Newt clearly sees them and works with them, which aligns with his established character. He is intimately acquainted with the lives and deaths of magical creatures. But these moments support the idea that Thestrals are not universal creatures, but selectively visible projections. They occupy a conceptual space like grief or trauma that becomes literal when the human soul has been marked. The closest parallel in magical literature is the Patronus. It too is born of intense emotion and memory, summoned through hope and love, but the Patronus is an external projection, a spell shaped by one's inner light. The Thestral, in contrast, might be considered the shadow of that light, appearing not when one calls it forth, but when it emerges unbidden, shaped by one's inner darkness. Both are real, and yet both are deeply personal. The Thestral is the Patronus of grief. There's another troubling layer. If Thestrals can only be seen after death is understood, does that mean some characters never come to terms with death? Could it be that people like Draco Malfoy, whose actions cause suffering, never saw death personally enough to be changed by it? That would explain why some wizards remain spiritually unmarked. In contrast, Harry's confrontation with Cedric's murder is public, violent, and undeniable. The death is not only seen, it is felt with all its moral weight. Cedric's death is therefore a threshold event, not only in the series, but in Harry's psyche. His innocence ends in that moment, and with it, his blinders fall away. That shift is symbolized by the sudden appearance of the Thestrals. In many ways, they are not just creatures, they are companions for the damned. They pull you forward through the world, but only after you've lost something you cannot retrieve. Even Dumbledore, who surely has known more death than most, is never described as seeing or speaking about Thestrals. This absence is conspicuous. Is it discretion? Or has he so deeply internalized death that the Thestrals no longer reveal themselves to him? It's possible the creatures appear only when the death is fresh, when the soul is still bleeding. That would explain why Harry sees them only after Cedric, because it is his first processed grief, raw and undiluted,